Hellclock is a brand new roguelike from developers who deeply understand what makes ARPGs so fun. At the start, you're pretty weak, and you probably won't get far. But as you kill enemies, you'll level up, gain new skills, and collect trinkets, usually in the form of fun loot explosions. There are plenty of progression systems that you can engage with to make the numbers go up, and each boss you defeat gets you a new relic that modifies one of your skills, allowing for quite a lot of buildcraft. But eventually, whether it's due to a dangerous foe, or you simply run out of time, your run is going to come to an end. That's where the real fun begins, because the relics you collect let you make crazy builds, and before you know it, you go from struggling to shoot a few zombies to cutting swaths of destruction through the forces of hell. Initially, I wasn't too sold on the timed aspect of the game. In the demo, it didn't feel particularly impactful to me, and I usually don't like it when games apply time pressure because I want to play at my own pace. This was something that bothered me about the recent release of Elden Ring Night Rain. But in Hellclock, I found the timer to be pretty generous, especially after I got a few upgrades via the Great Bell. And so instead, the timer was more of a gentle reminder that I shouldn't waste time backtracking, and after spending time with it throughout the campaign, I didn't mind it when there is more time pressure once I reached endgame. So even if you don't normally like time pressure in games, I do recommend giving it a shot, and if you find that you absolutely hate it, you can always enable relaxed mode, which disables the timer entirely. One thing Hellclock does an amazing job of is capturing that I broke the game feeling from ARPG buildcraft, and packaging it into an easy-to-consume roguelike gameplay loop. There are so many times that I started a new run, not because I had a specific goal, but because I was like, I got a cool relic. What does this do, and can I make a build out of it? Between the blessings, trinkets, relics, constellations, gear, and Great Bell upgrades, you're always progressing your character in some way, going into the next level a little bit stronger, or going into the next run a bit more prepared. And the timer creates an interesting risk versus reward, because there's also the red portal system, where you can skip earlier floors within a run, taking the risk that you might be under-leveled in exchange for getting back to your progression point much easier. Remember, you're on the clock, so in general it's a good idea to do it. Plus, if you have a powerful build, you'll be able to farm EXP off of those later enemies without any difficulty. So from my experience, it mostly works out for the best, though there were a couple times that I was way too greedy and shot myself in the foot.
Deus me acuda! Socorro!
Tua morte será tão sem valor quanto tuas ideias.
In short, Hellclock feels a lot like an ARPG, but it plays a lot like a roguelike, and the developers refer to it as an Exile-Like. And so if you like either genre, I absolutely recommend it, because Hellclock is the perfect way to fill a gap until the next season of your favorite ARPG releases, or if you're a roguelike enjoyer, I probably don't need to say anything else to sell you on the game. But in case you want to know more about the gameplay or progression systems, let's dive into a run, and I'll talk about each system as I encounter it. Okay, so the first thing I came across here is a red portal, and I'm going to pause the game so the timer doesn't tick down. These red portals take you to a random floor. They are unlocked via the bell, which is a meta progression system, and you can use them to skip ahead. So I could clear floor 1, or I could take the portal. Now I'm automatically on floor 3, which is a little bit of a wave defense. There's going to be 3 waves of enemies, usually 1 rare or elite foe within each wave, and you got to kill them all to advance. In the campaign, the timer pauses while you're doing this, but in Ascension, the timer does not pause, so you need to be able to quickly and efficiently kill the enemies. Now, I've also leveled up, which gives me the option to choose from one of 4 blessings. Again, without meta progression upgrades, this would be one of 3 blessings. So, Ethereal Onslaught enhances what is basically my main damage skill, Veil of Quills. Elemental Scourge, or Damnation of Flesh, Enhanced Judgment, a supporting skill. And Trimmed Transmission allows me to teleport around more frequently. So basically, if I need damage, I would take this. If I want to avoid enemy attacks or progress through the level more quickly, I would take this. And if I want to scale damage, well, it depends. Am I doing plague damage, physical damage, fire damage, lightning damage? In my case, I am primarily doing plague damage, so Damnation of Flesh would also be a damage increase. But I'm going to take this because movement speed and transportation is good. Now, you'll also notice enemies are dropping loot, these fun little trinkets. You can equip 1 trinket of each type And as you progress, you get higher level versions. So this is a trinket of power 1, later it would be replaced with a trinket of power 2. Basically, the way this works is the highest level and highest rarity trinket is what gets automatically equipped. So here, I've got trinket of power 1. If I get a trinket of power 2 that gives me 14% damage, that would replace it. If I got a higher rarity trinket of power 1 that gave me, say, 13% damage, that would also replace it. This way, you get the fun little lootables, like I picked up a trinket of power 1 that was common there, but it did not replace my existing trinket, as it was a lower rarity. Then I kill the boss, and I get a Blessing of Legacy. This gives you access to the relics that make up your meta progression. You want to do this as much as possible. I'm going to take the Book of Sin to automatically judge enemies, because who doesn't want to auto-judge things? I also got some soul stones. Those will be handy for unlocking more nodes on the old bell. Now here, unfortunately, I don't really love any of the options. I don't need retaliation damage. I'm pretty tanky, so I don't need the conviction gain, so I'm going to use the redraw feature. This increases in cost over the run. But you know, it was absolutely worth it, because now I can drastically increase my shred intensity. Oh look, fire lightning, if only I needed that. I'm going to go crit damage instead on Brutal Smite. And again, crit damage. This is another advantage of using the red portal. When you do so at a low level, you jump ahead and you get a lot of EXP for defeating enemies, provided your build is up to the task. This is the setup that I used to fully beat the campaign, so it's kind of just going to blast through all the enemies in Act 2. Now, just like how you can kill enemies to get EXP to level up to gain blessings for your skills, you could also buy Blessing of Foundation with your gold. Gold is collected by killing enemies, breaking objects, and opening treasure chests. These are blessings for your character that apply to all skills. So if I got 20% damage on Veil of Quills, that would apply only to Veil of Quills. But Blessing of Force, not only does it apply to all of the elemental damage types, including both Plague and Lightning, but additionally, that plus 15% would apply to both Veil of Quills and Passage. I'm going to go with a crit hit chance here, though, because base crit is pretty good. And then on to the next floor, which is a boss floor. So bosses tend to be tankier, tougher. Again, I am overpowered, so this guy kind of got nuked. But bosses also give you a Blessing of Legacy, and they have a pretty good chance of dropping a relic. Like you can see that resilient small relic of something that is cut off by the Blessing of Legacy. So basically, if you are in a run and you don't think you're going to be able to complete it or win the act, try to get to a boss and try to kill that boss, as that's going to give you meta progression that you can then use to be more successful next time. Small relic of swiftness. Now, if you see a little golden icon, looks kind of like a shop on your map, that is a scavenger. If you've played Diablo and you know what a treasure goblin is, scavengers are treasure goblins. They drop a good number of soul stones, but they'll try to run away from you, and if you can't do enough damage to them in time, they will teleport and escape. In general, I've found that scavengers are actually a pretty good measure of if I am ahead or behind on damage. If I can kill the scavenger, I'm in a good spot. I'm probably going to be able to take on the bosses, no problem. If I can't kill the scavenger, I need more damage ASAP. You also encounter shrines occasionally, like this Shrine of Aptitude. It's a temporary buff. They are absolutely worth interacting with, as it takes no time at all, but most of the time it's not going to make or break your run. Now, once you encounter the constellation system in Act 2, you start encountering cursed shrines. These are scattered throughout Act 2 and 3. They give you 1 point on your constellation tree if you're able to complete 3 waves of enemies, with a final wave usually having a bunch of rares. Let's check in on those trinkets. So here we go, Trinket of Power 3, as you can see, 14% damage. The Trinket of Precision, only plus 2.5% crit chance. So definitely some room for improvement. Nice movement speed one, though. Thing is, this is a passive system. I'm not going out of my way to say, all right, I'd like to pick up this trinket. I don't want to pick up that trinket. And I think it serves a really interesting purpose in the game. Because in a lot of ARPGs, when you open a treasure chest, you get a big old explosion of loot. It's nice to see stuff on the screen. And here, those trinkets kind of provide that nice little, almost visual clutter of loot on the ground that you can see, and you can often pick it up by walking near it. It's automatic, you don't have to hit any buttons, which gives you a nice feeling of, oh, hey, I got something. I killed an enemy, and it dropped loot. Look at that. Trinket of Aptitude, and that one was actually an upgrade. And at the end of the day, just like how it's fun to see an explosion of loot that comes out of a treasure chest, even if you know most of it isn't going to be useful, it's fun to see trinkets dropping constantly as you're killing enemies, even if you know most of them won't be an upgrade. Now, occasionally, you encounter gear drops. Some of these are in the form of Blessings of the Future. This replaces one of those foundational blessings. You can also just get them as a drop from enemies, and once you're back in camp, you're able to purchase them using soul stones. So in this case, let's see if there's anything that's useful. Looks like I already have equal or better, but especially early game when you're still progressing, picking up some of this stuff can be a huge deal. Like if I didn't have a serrated revolver, it would be huge to get this, not only for the base damage, but also for the skill projectile amount that scales way more damage on my Veil of Quills than simply base damage. And just like with everything else, you can redraw if you don't like any of the options. So after that, it's time to go back to camp, and that's a good opportunity to talk about all of the game's meta progression systems that take place outside of a run. So first up, the Blessed Corner. This is where you can buy new equipment. The tier will depend on how far you progress the main story, but basically the farther you progress, the better the stuff you get. Also, there are unique relics, so sometimes you'll find something really cool and learn, hey, I can play an entirely new build archetype because I found this. You know, I'm going to buy that just as a quick example. Now, in the skill book, you can level skills up. You unlock the skill level upgrades elsewhere, but this is where you can assign them. You might say, well, wait a minute, why would you want to assign them? Why doesn't it just level things automatically? Passage is a really good example of this. At level 1, it has a short cooldown, 3.5 seconds. So if I was just using Passage to teleport around, I would very much want to keep it at level 1. But if I say, hey, 1094% base damage is kind of cool, maybe I do take it up to level 7 and use it to kill enemies, even if the cooldown is much, much longer. At the start of the game, this is unlocked, and these skills are unlocked, minus Bombardment. Bombardment is from the Act 1 boss. Then you get these skills when you enter Act 2. This is from the Act 2 boss, and you get these skills over here when you enter Act 3. So there's a nice sense of progression with the skills over here being simple and easy to use, and these being more complex / a little bit more difficult to use. Next up, there is the Great Bell, which I'm sure I've called the Old Bell a lot of times so far in this video. I apologize. There are too many bells. I'm pretty sure the skill that drops bells on enemies is Old Bell. This is the Great Bell. This is the titular skill tree / meta progression system. In general, I found the best approach is to rush the big nodes. Things like reliquary size upgrade to equip more relics. Red portals, they're really good for jumping ahead in progression. Hellclock timer, I mean, that should be self-explanatory. And as you progress, you'll be able to go through the central tree first, then on the left after you unlock Act 2, and on the right after you unlock Act 3. So there's quite a bit of progression here, and you can put a lot of points into things that feel meaningful before you're going around and going, well, I guess I could use some extra cooldown and movement speed. Those things are good, but they're not as exciting because I've already done a lot of the progression. Whereas getting, say, a reliquary size upgrade or skill levels, that feels immediate and impactful. This is based on the total number of soul stones earned, meaning you don't have to actually spend soul stones to unlock points. You can use them for other things. You can, however, spend soul stones to respec the tree if you don't like your choices. So then you have the reliquary. This is where you equip all of those fun relics, and also where most of the game's build crafting takes place. If I wanted to play Holy Rosary, I could make it orbit at a fixed distance and deal more damage, meaning I can control the damage by running into enemies. I could also take Savior's Shield, where ignited enemies deal significantly less damage while I'm affected by Prayer of Health. Or if I want to do something that's a little more offensive, I could go with Tempest, where Double Knives, basically Whirlwind or Bladestorm, has increased damage based on movement speed. Basically, any relics that I don't need, I'm going to turn into Soul Stones. And then I'm going to buy more space, like so, because I have a relic collection addiction, and I'm running out of space, and I'm really, really happy that in a recent patch, the developers added the option to buy more pages, and I'm probably going to buy way too many of them. In addition, Soul Stones are useful for upgrading relics. So when you upgrade a relic, numbers increase. Like this one, the Plague Explosion on Mark of a Vulture goes from 403 to 453, which is a huge damage bump. The crit hit chance stat goes up, conviction gain, experience gain. Basically, it's just a whole bunch of good stuff. Now, in some cases, numbers decrease. Like here on the Feathered Dagger, instead of Veil of Quills losing 45% of its damage each time it pierces, it now only loses 40, which is also a damage increase, even though the number's going down. So then the last meta progression system, which unlocks as you explore Act 2, is the constellation map. If you've played Grim Dawn, this is very similar. You start here, where you pick your path. Faith, Discipline, or Fury. This gives you devotions, like I have 4 Faith devotion and 1 Discipline devotion. Devotions unlock access to more constellations, so to allocate points into Ogham, I would need at least 1 Fury devotion. I don't have that, so I can't put points here. And as you complete constellations, you gain additional points to put into more devotions. So for example, I have completed Tupa. This gives me a lot of mana regeneration, which is really good, and fun little orbiting mana orbs. As a result, I unlocked Saint Hedwig, Jackie, and Lemania. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of these names. There's a good chance I am. So if I complete this, the completion bonus is going to be 4 Faith Devotion, 3 Discipline, and 1 Fury, which will then unlock even more constellations on the tree. For example, I could unlock Oxala after this, provided I was able to get a second Fury Devotion from something, like maybe completing Ogham. The constellation map plays a big role in Ascension as well, where you even gain additional points for completing higher hell levels. Now, so far, I've made a lot of comparisons between hellclock and ARPGs, and one of my favorite things to do in an ARPG is putting together a build that feels like it breaks the game. Don't worry, there are lots of crazy builds that you can play in hellclock. A lot of them feel like they break the game, and only a few actually do. The first build that really came together for me was a spin-to-win setup using reflexes and double knives. Reflexes being a passive kind of ring of blades thing, and double knives being spin-to-win. Remember, the measure of a good ARPG is how fun it is to play spin-to-win, and when playing this, I would give hellclock a very fun but you need sunglasses out of 10. Reflexes gave me melee damage and movement speed thanks to one of its unique relics. Then, Tempest and Scout Medals, 2 unique relics for double knives, buff it up while letting me spin at full speed. Going fast isn't just important because you're on the clock, going fast is fun, and double knives scaling off of movement speed is the perfect incentive to go even faster. It was really easy to play, just hold down the spin to win button, and use reflexes along with some defensive buffs from time to time. This very much carried my early runs, but eventually my damage fell off, and it is a little bit risky when enemies are creating circles or death zones on the floor to have to stand in melee range to do damage. Plus, I had a pile of cool relics to try, so I decided to experiment with something else. What I settled on was Bell Summoner. Well, okay, at first I just tried playing the Bell skill with Unshakable Faith, because I had a lot of fun with that in the demo. But then I found a brand new relic called Bloody Doll, which scaled my spell damage based on summons. And there's a relic for the Bell that summons a Catholic Guard soldier on use. I then found Call of a Guard, which changes the active effect on the Summoned Catholic Guard skill into a buff that doubles the number of guards you have. But surely that doesn't work, right? Surely you can't summon a bunch of guards by spamming bells, and then use the skill to double them to get even more damage on your bells, while summoning more guards, right? Oh yes, yes it does work. It was very fun, but I don't necessarily recommend it, because the damage was not worth the visual clutter it created. I couldn't really see what enemies were doing. Maybe this was because I was summoning a bunch of bells and minions. Maybe this is because I was using Bombard. But also, the more minions that appeared on the screen, the less frames that I had of visible gameplay. But there are other builds to play that do just as much, if not more damage, without the screen clutter and frame drops. That said, I have played for about 40 hours so far, and this is the only build I've encountered that breaks the game in a bad way. All the others break the game in a good way. And for an example of that, the build that I used to complete the campaign was based off of Veil of Quills, and this breaks the game in the best way possible. It scales extremely well off of additional projectile effects, as you can use the hits to proc additional explosions, and you can give the quills pierce, so even if they aren't actively doing damage, they're triggering even more explosions, and who doesn't love explosions? This has everything a good ARPG build should. Tons of screen clutter, as you send out fans of homing projectiles, but it's really screen clutter the enemies need to deal with, rather than screen clutter for yourself. Really good single target damage. I was absolutely melting bosses. Like a mediocre run was something like 10 million DPS, and the good ones, way higher. It also does more damage than anything that I had done before, and anything that I've done since. And of course, explosions. Why? Because explosions. The hard part of this build was actually solving the mana. Veil of Quills isn't that bad on its own, But Judgment, which massively lowers enemy resistances, is quite mana hungry. But I ended up finding a constellation that solved all of my mana problems. And if you want to know more about this, I'm going to do a full build video on it soon, so do be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss that. With that said, I feel like I have barely scratched the surface when it comes to builds in hellclock. There are so many cool interactions that you can get by combining relics for different skills. So every time you get a new relic, I strongly recommend that you equip it, play around, and hey, if you find anything cool, let me know down in the comments. But there is more to hellclock than just the campaign. There's also the endgame system known as Ascension. At the beginning of a new run, you select a series of penalties to take on. The more of them you select, the higher your hell level, and there are rewards for clearing different hell levels, such as hell 10 or hell 35. Each Ascension lasts 7 runs, and you get 7 additional runs per act you clear, meaning you essentially have 21 runs to re-clear the entire game. You also get an expanded version of the old bell progression system known as the Infernal Bell, and access to more constellation points as you complete higher hell levels and cleanse cursed shrines. Now at first, I found Ascension to be a bit jarring, because at the end of each run, all of my relics went poof. So you could say the campaign is more roguelite, with meta progression systems constantly pushing you forward. And Ascension is more roguelike, where you rely on your knowledge of the game to progress through stronger builds. But after playing for a few rounds, I came to like this. Each Ascension, my build went poof, but that was just an excuse to try something new, which pushed me to experiment with skills that I otherwise wouldn't have tried. Ascension also really leans into the game's time attack element as well. The clock no longer pauses when fighting bosses, which means it's much more important to take advantage of the red portals and know what you can get away with. But because I had 20 or so odd hours of playing under a time limit from going through the campaign, this felt like a fun challenge rather than being something oppressive. And there were several times where I ran out of time. I had plenty of defenses, I could survive everything, but I wasn't doing enough damage to actually clear the bosses in the time limit. That said, since I had 20 or so odd hours of playing the game already, it no longer felt like an oppressive arbitrary timer. Instead it was just, hey, you need to make your build better, or you need to utilize more red portals. Somewhat like how dying in a Souls-like often feels like a reminder that you should probably get good and not face tank those things. Now, the Ascension system is in beta, and it does feel a bit less polished than the campaign experience. As such, I have a few complaints or concerns, but most of them are minor, and I expect they're going to be addressed in future patches. In fact, if you're watching this video after release, they might have already been addressed. For example, when starting a new Ascension run, all of your meta progression systems, relics, the Infernal Bell, constellations are reset, which means you need to reallocate all of your points into those systems. Relics make sense, you build them up as you play, but for the skill-based ones, I'd love to see some sort of loadout that lets me use past skill trees with points automatically reactivating as I earn them. And another frustration that I didn't notice too much during the campaign, where I could just restart a run if it wasn't going well, but with the run limits in Ascension, sometimes I saw the game offering me way too many blessings for my utility skills instead of my damage skill. So I'd fall behind on damage, I'd run out of time, and yeah, I'd lose the run. So I'd love to see something like a skill banish, where I say, hey, I only want to use this for utility, I don't care about any enhancements to it, please just stop giving me blessings for it. But again, to be clear, these are minor complaints. I've enjoyed engaging with the Ascension system, and I'm curious how far I'll be able to push, as eventually it's going to go up to floor 100. And I also look forward to seeing new relics and more viable builds as the system evolves. And so in short, I've had a lot of fun diving into hellclock. It does a great job of finding that middle ground between an ARPG and a roguelike. It's easy to pick the game up. You don't need to spend 1,000 hours getting your PhD in Leech by reading wiki pages, you can just play. And you spend 15 to 30 minutes doing a run, then you can put it down and come back later, or if you're anything like me, you're probably going to go again, because the last run was really fun. It also does an excellent job of capturing the progression system's build craft and number go up goodness from an ARPG. The timer applies just enough pressure to encourage you to keep pushing forward without feeling oppressive, and then once you've completed the campaign, you get to do it again, and again, and again once more with the Ascension system. If I had to relate the gameplay feel of hellclock to anything else that I've played, it would be Path of Exile, where every time I beat a chapter, I was excited to see what new skills were unlocked and what builds I could play, just like how, after every PoE patch, I excitedly read the patch notes to see what build I was going to play and then probably just played a different version of Cast on Crit because Cast on Crit's really fun. So if you enjoy your ARPGs or you just want a damn solid roguelike, I strongly recommend Hellclock. Between the demo and the review build, I've put over 40 hours into the game so far. I look forward to playing a more refined version of Ascension in the future, and I'm sure going to play many, many more hours of Hellclock in between. But what about you? Is this game up your alley? And if so, let me know some of your other favorite ARPG roguelike games, as this is a genre I've been seeing more entries in, and I'd love to play more of them. Also, if you want to see my thoughts on a wider variety of games, head over to my Steam Curator page, linked down in the description. Recently, I've been trying to put up at least a simple text review for everything I play, whether it's something I loved or hated, a game I played for 1 hour, or a game that I played for 1,000. It's a great way for me to give just off the top of my head thoughts without having to commit to a full video. Again, that'll be linked down in the description below. So that's going to be it for me today. Thanks for watching to the end. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and with that, good luck in your runs. I'll see you in the next one.